Greetings, classmates, once again. Let's talk about whether I am doing ABA. So, in my district, I'm a behavior specialist. I work with students directly and adults. More so, my job is focused on adults with training staff and supporting staff with intervening with students with challenging behavior. This often comes in the form of training and providing support around data collection and reducing the amount of disciplinary issues that adults come in contact with when it comes to students. So the answer to the question is of am I doing ABA? Loosely, no. I know ABA is kind of data. Excuse me. ABA is data driven, and the data suggests that I am not doing ABA currently as it exists where I work. So while I'm attempting to use more effective strategies with adults and students, I haven't been empirically effective. I know this might seem like I'm being hard on myself, but when I look at my description that I gave last week, uh, in that you wouldn't tell that I've been very data driven in my practices. So what is missing from what I do? Fidelity checks. So I could use some inner observer agreement. I would certainly be able to benefit from testing out whether I'm I'm we are my office is measuring what we're attempting to measure, and if the data that we get or that is yielded from that is reliable, that we consistently get the same results when we utilize certain um, interventions. So, what else is missing? Description of adult and student behavior. So, in my description, I said we deal with disproportionality issues, especially as it comes to suspension. So we know that students don't suspend themselves, which is an adult behavior that is imposed on students. And if we want to get something different, we need to figure out how to put reinforcement schedules in place for the adults to influence behavior and put the behavior of spending on extinction pattern, where that type of behavior no longer receives reinforcement, because as we know that punishment is usually negatively reinforcing for the person implementing the punishment procedure. And that's the same thing that happens when we suspend students. And then we also need to apply similar logic to students. Um, and so, what else is missing is accurate measurement of effectiveness of strategy implementation for adults and students. So, again, if the only thing that we're taking data on is suspension, that doesn't, and that's just an example, because it's not the only data source, but are our data sources actually measuring how effective our strategies are, or do we need to change our data collection to accurately reflect um, what we're doing, right? Or flipping that on us on the other side is find data that that actually speak to the outcome that we're getting, that we're actually influencing. Like, is this the only data source that represents growth with regards to what we're actually trying to do as a district? And then also generalization strategy. So when I train in the classroom setting or the the field, how do I get adults to generalize those skills? With students, we do role play. Sometimes we do different forms of sequential modification. Again, using an ABA term loosely, uh, because we're not matching the sample or anything like that. But I, though that type of language, those types of practices are missing from my practice. What do I need to add to my job description? So, follow-up assessment and feedback to teachers. That's not something that's in my job description. It's something that I try to do. However, I will say that I work with 35 plus schools as the sole behavior specialist. We're in the process of hiring another one. And you might be asking yourself, well, what the hell is it that you actually do, Adam? And that would be a complicated answer. Like, why does one person service 35 schools in that way? It's a great question. And a complicated one, because it's probably not like you're probably imagining in your head. What I also need is data collection that reflects upon that reflects the acquisition of skills taught and a specific description of adult problem behavior. So if we're teaching the skills, are we actually measuring the application of the skills used? Or are we making a big leap between teaching social emotional related skills to actual behaviors that we expect students to exhibit? Or do those social emotional skills taught actually have behaviors with them that we can measure, a simple yes or no checklist, whether those skills are actually taking place in a different setting? That goes again to that generalization. So just those are general things that I need to add. And then decision making process based on valid, again, and reliable data. Are we measuring what we intend to measure? And then are we producing consistent outcomes based on what we're saying we're doing? And then, so my reflective conclusion is as follows: how many of us sit in truly behavior analytic positions if we work in the school system? I know that might seem kind of loaded and very specific to where I work, but I'd be interested to hear, like, if I know ABA looks different in the private setting versus the school setting, but if any district is like mine where that is a relatively new movement, which I know is not in some places, and in some places they have a decent understanding of what applied behavior analysis is. I know that my school district is nascent or novice, so they're newly acquiring these understandings. How many school systems truly understand what ABA actually is? It goes into my last question, or my last reflective conclusion. And then, because I know I only work in one school district, and these questions kind of reflect what I've come in contact with as a whole, which might not be accurate to a lot of cases, or might not be able to extrapolate my experiences in my school system with what might be happening in school systems outside of mine. Although I do serve on a statewide behavior steering committee, so I do have a little bit of understanding about that. And then I also have a responsibility to spread the actual work of behavior analysts and ABA to my school system and create a meaningful understanding for my peers, families / clients. So this is my presentation, and I hope that you were able to gain something. This was extremely depressing for me. See y'all next time.